Hello, students. Welcome back to science class. Nice to see you all there. Today, we are going to continue and finish up our notes regarding our first topic, Intro to Science. So if you haven't done so already, let's get your books open to the appropriate page, and we will pick up where we left off yesterday. And so today we're going to begin our discussion about scientific measurement. Does anybody smell anything in here? Okay, maybe it's just me. Okay, scientific measurement. And you might be wondering why in the world we are starting out with this image of a king's tongue sticking out of his mouth so long. Well, here's a little story for you. You see, years ago, as one of our videos earlier in the week indicated, long ago, the system of measurement in a particular country or kingdom was determined by the leader's body parts. Now, I'm not aware of any particular kingdom in history that actually used the king's tongue to measure things, but I am aware of people using feet. How many of you have ever heard of the unit of measurement called the foot? Well, believe it or not, many years ago, the unit of the foot was based upon the size of the king's foot. Now imagine that. What if one king died and another king came on the scene and he was much shorter or much taller than the previous king? Imagine what that would do to all of the architectural plans for someone building a house. Oh my goodness, all of the measurements would be off. How terrible would that be? Other body parts have been used in history. There was a time when the yard, the Y word, was based upon the distance between the queen's nose and her fingertip. In fact, in some places today, if you go to fabric stores and buy fabric, some of the older generation still measure fabric by holding it up to their nose and stretching out their hand an arm's length, because that is a yard of distance. Well, you can imagine that, everybody using their own finger as a unit of measurement for the inch and so forth. That might cause problems because look around the room, folks. We're all different. We're not all the same. And so using human body parts as a standard of measurement never really was a good idea, although it was very practical at the time. But in today's day and age, where we have commerce and interaction between different countries around the whole world, it is rather important to have a standardized measurement system. Now, scientists, both in this country and abroad, we have developed a different unit of measurement, a different measurement system, I should say. In fact, this system of measurement was developed during a very tumultuous period of history known as the French Revolution. You might be familiar with the French Revolution for such inventions as this. Does anybody know what this is? Call it out if you think you know. Yep, that's right. It's the most gruesome among you who knew that this is a guillotine or guillotine. And a guillotine was invented during this time period in order to make executions chop, 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 much more quick and efficient. Well, it was during this time frame that scientists developed another system that wasn't based on royalty and the people in charge. They wanted to make it a standard system that was based on things that they believed would not change. This system of measurement they called the metric system. And it's the system we as scientists will use in this class. And as you know, most of the world uses the metric system with just a couple of notable exceptions, including the United States. However, over the last numerous years, we have been adopting a more metric usage in regular daily life. And I'll show you some examples of that later on. But just as yesterday we talked about some words and how important it is to be able to recognize, identify, define words to know their meanings, in the metric system there are a few basic units that we need to know. And knowing just a few basic units will enable us to explore the metric system and science much more efficiently. So let's begin with the basic units in the metric system, beginning with length. In the standard system that we use in this country, most people are familiar with the unit called the yard. We will not be using yards or inches or miles in science class. In fact, units that begin with Y, yard, mile, M, inch, I, foot, F, all of those four-letter words are really bad words to use in science class. We're going to use much better words in science. So beginning with length, the basic unit of measurement is the meter. The meter can be abbreviated with the letter M. So meter is the basic unit of length. Volume. You're probably very familiar with volumes like gallons, quarts, pints. What you may be a little bit familiar with as well, however, is the metric unit of volume, which is the liter. You've probably bought 2-liter bottles of soda. Well, the liter is the basic unit of volume in the metric system. It brings us to mass. You probably weigh yourself, and we'll talk about the difference between weight and mass next week. But you probably weigh yourself with a scale, and the numbers you read are in pounds. Well, pounds are not the metric system. The unit that we use in the metric system to measure mass are grams, abbreviated by the letter G. So the three basic units of measurement in the metric system are the meter, liter, and gram. And later on, you'll have opportunity to listen to the meter, liter, gram, jam song on the website when you check out the notes. But I can't help but hum a little tune right now. Maybe you've heard it before. Meter, liter, and gram. Now you don't have to cram for your exam on the metric system. All right, now you don't have to listen to the actual song. All right, back on track, back to work here. Metric system, basic unit of temperature is degrees Celsius. Degrees Celsius, not Fahrenheit, but degrees Celsius. When you watch a weather report here and you hear it's going to be 37 degrees Celsius, you might bundle up, or rather 37 degrees Fahrenheit in this country, you might bundle up thinking it's going to be pretty frigid outside. Well, in the rest of the world, if you heard a weather report in the morning and they said it was going to be 37 degrees Celsius, you would not be reaching for a winter jacket, because 37 degrees Celsius is over 98 degrees Fahrenheit. It would be hot and steamy out. In fact, 37 degrees Celsius is body temperature. So right now you are probably close to 37 degrees Celsius, not Fahrenheit, or you'd be dead, but degrees Celsius. And degrees Celsius is abbreviated with a little circle for degrees and the big C for Celsius. All right, so here are the basic units of length, volume, and mass: meter, liter, and gram. Now you don't have to cram for your exam on the metric system. All right, so all fine and good, but how do you use those units? Well, let's talk about scientific tools. If you look at our friend here, Bob the Builder, what does he have around his waist? Call it out. That's right, a tool belt. And can he do it? Can Bob do it? Can Bob do it? I think he can. He's using tools to do the job. Now this is the Bob that I'm familiar with, but it recently was brought to my attention that Bob looks a little bit different these days. He's had a makeover. I'm not so happy about his makeover. I mean, look at how prim, proper, and fancy he is. It doesn't look like he does any work anymore. What's up with that? Well, Bob the Builder, or any builder for that matter, has to use certain tools. And in science class, we're going to learn how to use certain tools as well. So what are the different tools to use in the metric system? Well, let's begin with length. Length is measured with a tool called a ruler. Now, the rulers, there are many different kinds of rulers. There are little rulers like this, and there are bigger rulers like this. The one above me right now is a meter stick. And if I bring it in for a closer view, you can see that the meter stick has lots and lots of little lines on it and numbers. And we're going to be learning how to use the meter stick, the entire length of the meter stick, which is a meter long. So we'll get back to the meter in a while. And just an additional note here about the meter. If you remember from our video a couple days ago, the meter was developed when the metric system was developed as that distance that would require 1 million of them from the North Pole to the South Pole. Imagine that. 1 million of these would be that distance. Now, was it from the North Pole to the South Pole, or was it from the North Pole to the equator? Gosh, I want you to put your memory thinking cap on, and if you can tell me the correct answer before the end of the week, I'll give you a bonus point. So, a ruler, whether small or large, like the micrometer yesterday, are different types of rulers that we use to measure the length of something. Well, what about volume? Well, in science class, we use a tool called a graduate or a graduated cylinder. Here's an example of a graduate or a graduated cylinder. And it has numbers on it, and we'll be learning tomorrow how to use the graduated cylinder and how we measure the volume of different liquids. Now, we've got these small graduates like this, and we also have larger graduates like this one here. Or if we're really measuring large volumes, we've got really big graduates. So you can see the difference between the big graduate and the little graduate. All right, no matter what kind of volume we're measuring, we've got the right tool for the job. That brings us to the next one, which is mass. When we measure mass in the metric system, we use an instrument called a balance. Now, a balance and a scale are not the same thing. A scale is what you use to measure your weight, and you probably have a scale in your bathroom, perhaps. A balance is used to measure mass. This is a digital balance, which we will be using in the laboratory. And we're also going to be using double pan balances. I'm not going to hold one of those up for you right now. Double pan balances, we'll learn how they are used when we get into the laboratory. The last tool here for us to use is to measure temperature. And you may have guessed temperature and what tool is used. It is a thermometer. Here are laboratory thermometers that we'll be using to place into liquids or semi-liquids to measure the volume of. So here is an example of a thermometer. These are glass thermometers filled with a liquid, a red liquid inside that can be seen. We don't use mercury thermometers anymore in the laboratory. The red liquid is safe for us in a laboratory. We'll also be using digital thermometers at one point, especially in 8th grade, to measure the temperature of various substances. And I'll introduce you to those as we get closer to it. So, the tools we use: rulers, graduates, balances, and thermometers to measure the various things in science class. Now, just as I explained to you yesterday with different words in science and how prefixes and suffixes can change meanings, well, there are some metric prefixes. In fact, there are 6 basic metric prefixes that if you learn these 6 basic prefixes, then you have mastered about 90% of the metric system. So some of them you may already be aware of. So let's go down the list here. And by the way, these prefixes can be added in front of any of the basic units, meter, liter, or gram, in order to give us brand new units. So you don't have to remember things like, let's see, there's 12 inches in a foot, 3 feet in a yard, 36 inches in a yard, 5,280 feet in a mile, 1,760 yards in a mile. You don't have to remember stuff like that in the metric system. All you do in the metric system to go from one unit or another is move decimal points back and forth. It's super duper easy. In fact, I'm hoping that you will learn over the next couple of weeks how beautiful the metric system is for scientists. And anyone else for that matter who uses it. So let's go through this list of prefixes, shall we? Beginning with milli. The prefix milli means 1/1000th of something, or 0.001. I showed you a meter stick earlier. This is 1 meter long. If I hold it right in front of me, you can see how long this meter is. It is 1 meter long. But if you take this 1 meter and you divide it into 1,000 little slices, which is what all these tiny little lines are. Each of those are one tiny little slice. There are 1,000 of them in a meter. And so each one of those is 1,000th or 0.001 of a meter. What do you think we call that unit? Each of those tiny little lines on this meter stick, which measure 0.001 meters. Think about what prefix means, 0.001, and put it in front of the word meter. And what do you have? Call it out. Millimeter. That's exactly right. Each of these tiny little lines, which is 0.001 of an entire meter, each of those are called millimeters, and there are 1,000 of them in a meter. A millimeter, for comparison, is about the thickness of a thick fingernail. So a millimeter. Let's go to the next one. The next prefix is centi. Centi has the value of 0.01 or 1/100th of something. So if you put the prefix centi in front of the unit meter, what do you have? You've got a centimeter. Again, look at our entire meter stick here. Chop it into 100 different sections, and each of those sections correspond to these numbers. Each of these numbers is 1/100th of 1 meter. 0.01, 1/100th of a meter. What do you think we call that unit, everyone? A centimeter. A centimeter is about as thick as your pinky finger. So your pinky finger is about as big as a centimeter for a frame of reference. That brings us to the next one. The next prefix is deci. We don't use this one all that much, but you should know what it is. A deci, the prefix, means 1/10 of something. So put it in front of meter, and you've got a decimeter. So take our meter again, and these big bold numbers, divide this entire meter into 10 sections, 10 different sections. So each one of those sections is 1/10 of a meter. In fact, if you put the prefix deci in front of meter, you've got a decimeter. And a decimeter is about the thickness of your hand. One hand is about a decimeter. By the way, a hand is also a measurement for horses, but we won't go there right now. All right, that leaves us 3 more prefixes: deca, hecto, and kilo. Hecto means 10, hecta. Boy, I am like all confused. Deca. Deca means 10. Deca means 10. Deci is 10th. Deca is 10. Hecto is 100 and kilo is 1,000. Of all of these 6 prefixes, the ones that you will use the most are milli, centi, and kilo. Those are the most familiar. So you really need to study only 3 of these, but it is good to know all 6 of them. So milli is 1,000th, centi is 100th, deci 1/10th, deca 10, hecto 100, and finally kilo is 1,000. So, as an example, we could put kilo together with meter and get another unit, kilometer, or a kilometer. A kilometer is a distance that is measured on roads. Imagine taking one of these meters and laying it side by side by side 1,000 times. That would be 1 kilometer. That's a long way. Towns are measured, the distance between towns, I should say, are measured in kilometers. Now, I want to show you one of the beautiful things about this. I've been using the meter stick to illustrate this, but check this out. It can be used with the other units as well. Let me show you this, for instance. You know what this is. It's a water bottle. In fact, I'm thirsty right now. That's good water. It's a water bottle. And if you look at the volume of the liquid in here, it is 500 milliliters. That is 0.5 liters. That's a half a liter. This that you're all familiar with is a half of a liter. Well, if you have a half of a liter and you add it to another half of a liter, what do you have? You've got 2 halves, which is a whole. 2 of these water bottles together make 1 liter, the basic unit in the metric system for volume. So here we have a liter. But check this out. You put prefixes like milli, for instance, in front of liter, and what do you have? A milliliter. Well, what's a milliliter? A milliliter, as we will discover in the lab, and we'll talk more about tomorrow, is 1,000th of a liter. So 1 milliliter equals 1 liter. And tomorrow, you're going to see how even cooler that is. Same with mass. You can put these prefixes in front of mass. A kilogram and a gram. A gram is the basic unit. And by the way, a gram has the mass equivalent to about a paperclip. You get 1,000 of these together, and you have 1,000 grams. And 1,000 grams, what prefix do you think you'd use? I kind of spoiled it already, but say it out loud. What would be 1,000 grams? That's right, a kilogram. And this object here has a mass of it's exactly 1 kilogram. Woo, goodness, that made some noise. So here are the basic units and the basic prefixes in the metric system. It is a good idea to remember these units in the correct order, and here's a little memory aid for you. And I like it because it's got my name in it. And it says, King Henry died unexpectedly drinking chocolate milk. Now, if you've known me for a while, you know that I am a self-professed chocoholic. I love chocolate. So this phrase, actually, I remember it because it's terrible news for me. King Henry died unexpectedly drinking chocolate milk. My goodness, but there's no other way I'd rather go than drinking chocolate milk because I love chocolate milk. But look at the first letter of each word. K, H, D, U, D, C, M. Now look on the bottom of that scale. Kilo, hecto, deca. The unit, meter, liter, or gram, deci, centi, and milli. Do you see how they go in order from left to right, from largest to smallest? And if you know the order of those prefixes, to remember the value, all you do is move the decimal point one place to the right or one place to the left. And tomorrow we'll experiment with that, and we'll learn how to do that more easily. But I think you've digested enough for today. So I'm going to cut this video off at this point, and tomorrow we will continue with finishing up our notes as we do our laboratory activity together. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me here today to have a little lesson on the metric system, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.